Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host Khalid. But today is Monday, the 7th of July, 2025. These are the stories that we will be highlighting during the course of the show. We'll begin with the latest as far as the Middle East, especially Gaza, is concerned. Today is day 639 since the conflict, this war began between Israel and Palestine, and it shows no signs of abating, despite the fact that ceasefire talks are ongoing between Israel and the Palestinian side. The first round of talks for the moment, as per various reports, have gone forward or have gone ahead without any breakthrough, but there is another round of talks that is going to be held later in the day. Whether that reaps some kind of benefits or not is another question altogether. The US side, especially Donald Trump, is extremely positive of the outcome of these ceasefire talks between Israel and Palestine. He says the Israeli side has agreed to it. Hamas also showed inclination to agree to this side, but at the end of the day it all depends on whether this is implementable or implemented or not. This and more is going to be discussed. Also the BRICS statement that came out that also criticized the US and other countries as far as non-action on the Palestinian situation is concerned, and more will be discussed in our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the Indian defeat, let's put it that way. Well, they tried at the United Nations Security Council, they tried at the SCO, they tried at the Quad, and now they tried at this meeting of the BRICS in order to defame Pakistan one way or the other, but they could not succeed. No mention of Pakistan in any of the statements, in any of these meetings of the international organizations had Pakistan in its statement, and that was a huge diplomatic defeat for India and a huge diplomatic victory for Pakistan. Then we are going to talk about US President Donald Trump that calls Elon Musk's new political party. Yes, Elon Musk has now talked about a new political party that he is going to begin. He says this political party's plan is ridiculous, and of course the different concessions that were being given to Elon Musk are also slowly and steadily being removed. We'll be talking about this feud in some detail in our third segment. Our fourth story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns Donald Trump again, who has threatened an extra 10% of tariffs on the BRICS countries as the leaders met in Brazil. And of course, this is because of the criticism of the US by the BRICS countries and other decisions that Donald Trump feels are against the US interests. Finally, we'll be talking about the martyrdom anniversary of Lalik Jan, ladies and gentlemen, the 26th martyrdom anniversary of Kargil hero Havaldar Lalik Jan. Nishan-e-Haider is being observed today. He laid down his life while valiantly defending the motherland during the Kargil war in 1999. And of course, the messages came from everywhere, from the chief of the army staff, from our president, and from our prime minister. This is the lineup for today. Let's begin with our first story. Our first story, of course, concerns Gaza, what is happening in the Middle East. Today is day 639 since that conflict began between Israel and Palestine. We've been joined by two guests. Let me introduce them to you one by one in the studios. We've been joined by Farhan Bukhari sahab. He's a senior analyst. Farhan Bukhari sahab, pleasure as always to have you here. The pleasure is all ours, sir. Arnaud, Develay, who's an international jurist and political consultant, also joins us online. He joins us from the Middle East. Thank you very much, Mr. Arnaud, to have joined us as well. We'll begin with you. We'll begin with our guests, but before that, we just wanted to share with you a little report on what has been happening in the Middle East in the last few days.
Hamas says it's ready to begin negotiations immediately on US-backed Gaza ceasefire proposal, in a surprising shift after 21 months of war and genocide from Israel. The announcement came ahead of Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu's upcoming visit to Washington, where US President Donald Trump is pushing for a deal possibly by the next week. Trump welcomed Hamas' response in a positive spirit, telling reporters abroad Air Force One that US is pouring aid into Gaza and a ceasefire is urgently needed. Meanwhile, violence continues to rage in other parts of the region as Israeli forces bombed 3 ports and a power plant in Yemen, prompting the Houthis to launch missiles toward Israel, targeting Ben Gurion Airport and several ports in retaliation. On the other hand, in a major international development, the BRICS alliance has declared Gaza an inseparable part of occupied Palestinian territory, demanding a full Israeli withdrawal and urgent humanitarian access. The group also reaffirmed support for a two-state solution and called for Palestinians' full UN membership. As pressure mounts and the human toll rises, the world watches for what could be a pivotal week in the Middle East.
Arnaud, I'd like to understand, 3.5 hours long meeting goes on between both the sides, but there's no breakthrough. This has been reported by the BBC and other important media outlets. Now, another round of talks is going to be held today. Why has there been no breakthrough between the two sides, despite the inclination by both the sides to move forward in the right direction as far as a ceasefire agreement is concerned? Arnaud, can you hear?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. I just wanted.
Yes.
I hope you, had a look at. I mean, you managed to listen to the question that I asked you.
I have. Thank you very much. Well, it's difficult to anticipate anything as far as talks are concerned between the Hamas and the Israelis. With what we know and what we can go by is what has happened ever since October 7th, back when Joe Biden was still in the White House. We saw that there were a lot of attempts to try to broker ceasefire and lead to the liberation of the hostages, which is one of the stated claims of the Israeli government. Alas, only to be somehow failing at the last minute. And so what we have to understand in order to better grasp the intricacies of such talks is that there is essentially no incentive for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to come to a resolution in Gaza. Short, that is, and under pressure of his ally in the cabinet, seeing that Hamas essentially leaves Gaza in exchange for some kind of considerations, and that the Gaza population itself be essentially moved out of Gaza so that the Israeli may take over the area, which is a non-starter, obviously. And so short of those barely concealed objectives, the Israeli government keeps pounding on the same elements of language, which is free the hostages. But every time Hamas proposes something resembling a mechanism which would see, in exchange for an indefinite, long-lasting ceasefire, the Israeli cabinet refuses or comes up with some kind of technicalities, or starts a new front, opens up a new front in the region. So this is pretty much what has characterized the diplomatic track, so to speak, since October 7th. And there's no reason objectively to assume that whatever is going to be discussed in Washington will deviate from what we've unfortunately been witness to.
All right. Farhan, Bukhari Sahab, the fact is that the US President Donald Trump has been saying time and again that he wants to find a solution to this war between Israel and Palestine, and that both the sides are now ready to move forward. Now that Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, is in Washington, will the US President be able to convince him to do the needful?
Let me ask you a counter question. Do you believe these two men, given their record? And that is really where the cookie crumbles eventually. That is where the situation rests today. Donald Trump has been indulging in the worst kind of doublespeak. The US continues to provide Israel with very lethal arms, while Trump, for the screens, talks about his determination or his interest in finding a kind of a road to peace, a situation, and a peace agreement.
He says by next week, by this week, in fact, the peace agreement will be finalized between both the sides.
Well, we have to see it to believe it. I mean, that is fundamentally the point in all of this. And I think the principal problem is that Netanyahu continues to, this is a man who has dipped in his fingers the worst kind of blood known to us perhaps in the history of this world, and he has a free hand. As long as he has a free hand, backing of the United States, the recent attacks on Iran, I think made that very clear. As long as he has this free hand, Benjamin Netanyahu. And as long as Donald Trump gives nothing more than lip service, I think this terrible situation will likely continue as it's going right now. In a couple of months, it'll be 2 years since the conflict began. In I think about 3 months, we'll be celebrating or remembering the earthquake of 2005, which took at least 70,000 lives. And I fear the way the casualties are building up in Gaza, the number of casualties might get close to, heaven forbid, or cross the number of casualties that Pakistan witnessed almost 20 years ago. So this is a major catastrophe. And the main players, these two men, I just don't know if we can believe them.
All right, that's an important aspect to it. Major catastrophe, this is what you're saying, Farhan Bukhari Sahab. Arnaud, I'd like to understand, when it's major catastrophe, another part of this major catastrophe that is plaguing the people of Palestine is the starvation, the lack of basic health facilities, the lack of basic food, water, and other necessities. Shouldn't the international community be more robust in its response when it comes to at least this humanitarian aspect of this tragedy that is engulfing or being touched by all these Palestinians that are still alive?
Well, to be sure, I mean, collectively, the international community is guilty of non-action, or at least, if anything, action which would bear on putting an end to this Calvary. Those people are going through hell, essentially, for the last 2 years. The recourse before the International Court of Justice seems to have come to a grinding halt. Any injunctions bearing on implementing steps prohibiting what could amount to a genocide, the court hasn't yet quite ruled on this, the existence of a violation of the Genocide Convention. But even this injunction was completely rebuked by the Israeli regime. Quite the contrary, the Israeli regime went out of its way to essentially accuse the UN Agency for Refugees to be a front for Hamas, preventing them from doing what they are internationally mandated to do in similar context bearing on grave humanitarian disasters, replacing it with some kind of private entity which to this day no one knows really much what's going on, except that for the last months and a half or so, they are creating infrastructure which is wholly insufficient to provide food for the overwhelming amount of people in need of it. But worst of it, using those feeding points, those supply points, as a bait, as a trap, to then engage in indiscriminate killings of civilians, merely trying to get some food for themselves and their family. So what we're witnessing is more than a tragedy; it's a blight on collective humanity that, for the time being, shows no sign of abating. If we mention the numbers, sure, officially the numbers estimate roughly between 57 and 62,000 casualties. But we know from the Lancet and from a study conducted by Harvard that if we were to put all together the people that existed before October 7th, 2023 and today, we are roughly looking at 500,000 people who are missing.
That is true. I mean, and this is a very alarming number. And the fact remains that, as you very said, there is a certain complicity as far as Israeli brutalities, actions, crimes against humanity and war crimes are concerned. Farhan Bukhari Sahab, how do you interpret all that is happening to the Palestinians from a lens of international justice and morality?
Morality, justice, those are big words, but they don't seem to apply in providing even a little bit of comfort or relief to the Palestinians. Look at what's happened there since late 2023 to where we stand today. Relentless attacks, night after night after night, using the world's most sophisticated bombs, the most sophisticated delivery systems, i.e. the F-35, US manufactured of course, and other equipment.
I mean, the example of GHF, for example, let's just talk about aid, and one of the organizations that has been given aid has been accused of being complicit to killing hundreds of Palestinians when they came for this aid. A lot of countries have raised their concern over it, but despite that, the GHF has opened its services again today after a certain pause. I mean, what does that show? I mean, I really fail to understand the collective pause or collective muting of the general response or emotion that needs to be highlighted under these situations.
Well, there's no justice and, as I said, no morality left at all. Lots of lip service, country after country, especially Islamic world, expressing their anger and their concern. But these are mere words which, knowing Netanyahu's reaction and where Netanyahu is coming from this,
all right.
He turns his ears like this, completely deaf. So, what do?
Can't do anything, at least the way we are seeing things. Arnaud, I'd like to understand. The members call for an immediate unconditional ceasefire in Gaza and full withdrawal of Israeli forces from the occupied Palestinian territory. Will this statement have any kind of effect on the current situation?
Well, I'm quite pessimistic about this because owing, if anything, to the composition of the Israeli cabinet. Netanyahu knows that to remain alive politically, he needs to cave in to the more extremist elements within the cabinet, this religious eschatological crowd, like in the likes of Ben Gvir and Smotrich. Interestingly enough, Karim Khan, the now former on administrative leave at the ICC, was about to formulate a revolt to the three-member chamber for additional warrants to be issued against those two individuals when somehow a case was propped up against him, which for the time being sees the ICC being completely neutered. But the ICC was completely neutered even before that, because we know that Netanyahu has been able to travel freely in countries like Hungary, which announced on the day of his state visit, no less, that it would withdraw from the Rome Treaty. And we know that Netanyahu has been able to travel through airspace of full-fledged signatories of the Rome Treaty, like France, on his way to the US without being intercepted. So obviously, this is a catastrophic, not only for the people of Gaza, but if we zoom out, for the entire international rule of law, because basically the UN is powerless, the ICC is powerless, the ICJ is powerless. What would it take to bring a halt to this now evolving? It's not just war crimes and crimes against humanity. We might be now increasingly looking at what resembles, legally speaking, a genocide. And
what are the options that we have right now under the current situation? A lot of questions emanate, a lot of answers remain unanswered. We'll be back discussing this very issue after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome welcome back, and we are discussing the latest situation in Gaza. Arnaud, I'd like to understand what implications do the Israeli attacks on Yemen, particularly on Houthi-controlled ships and ports, is concerned. We all know that there is this tiff between the Houthis and and Israel because of the fact that the Houthis maintain that they will continue their attacks on the Israeli ships till such time that this Israel-Palestine conflict is resolved or comes to a halt. And Israel also reacts and continues its bombardment on Yemen as well, or Houthi controlled areas in Yemen as well. What's the solution, or what's going to happen as far as, what's the end game, let's put it that way, as far as the Israel-Yemen conflict is concerned?
Well, I don't see a resolution on that front for the foreseeable future, for the simple reason that the Israelis, as your guest mentioned earlier, to the extent they enjoyed the full support of the United States, Netanyahu feels empowered to keep basically, killing Palestinians as far as the eye can see. If anything, the Ansar Allah movement, which, let's remind ourselves, it might not be an internationally recognized government of Yemen, but it is nonetheless showing the way, because it is doing everything in its power to basically abide by the prohibition on the act of genocide, on the crime of genocide, and as such, it is by and large one of the sole entity, along with Iran to some extent, and some of the militias in Iraq and Lebanon, who are, with their own capabilities, doing what they can.
All right. Thank you very much, Arnaud, to have joined us as far as the situation in Gaza is concerned. And of course, this is a situation that continues with all its barbarities and all its non-humanistic angle to it. The fact is that despite these talks for ceasefire, the important thing right now is that Israel stop its genocide, its crimes against humanity, and its war crimes in the region. And we are already on day 639 since this conflict began, and we have so many unanswered questions regarding this conflict and the way Israel and the Israeli government has used it to their advantage to further gain access to more and more Palestinian lands, as if what they had was not enough. Let's come to our second story, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns the India, Pakistan, and the international organizations in whose meetings Pakistan's stance has been reiterated and the Indian stance has been negated time and again. It happened with the United Nations Security Council, then it happened with others such as the SCO, it happened with Quad, and now it has happened with BRICS. The statement that has come after the meeting in Brazil of the BRICS countries, that includes India, does not mention Pakistan or Pakistan being behind terrorist incidents that have recently happened, particularly the Pahalgam false flag operation. We continue to talk to Farhan Bukhari Saab regarding this as well. Farhan Saab, what does India's repeated failure to name Pakistan in BRICS, in Quad, in SCO, United Nations, indicate about its shrinking international diplomatic space?
Well, I think more than that, that's one way of looking at it. But I think on the other hand, you have widening diplomatic space for Pakistan, because at the end of this conflict that we saw in May, and the manner in which the ceasefire was brought about, the Indians in general and Modi ji in particular still deny that India was finally forced into that spot where they had to request the United States to intervene and to arrange a ceasefire. But that's the reality of what happened. And coming out of that, Pakistan's position, although Pakistan, to its credit, we have to admit, not even once, not even indirectly, not even remotely in this entire conflict, even in a roundabout way, flashed its nuclear credentials. That was completely off the table. And I think that's very responsible behavior.
And they always talked of talks, they always talked of finding a solution to the issues. They have talked of a neutral investigation to the Pahalgam false flag operation.
Yes, very much so. But Pakistan's military capacity from the line of control to the air to the Arabian Sea, Indian Ocean region, This must have surprised many in India, as we can see now.
The statements continue to come from different sectors, from the military and the non-military sectors, from the journalistic sectors as well, on how they were surprised by Pakistan's dominance as far as the airspace is concerned.
And let me add here that on the night of the 7th May, when reports came of India initiating the first attack, I for one, all of us had our tellies on, and I for one imagined that Pakistan might respond, but maybe by the next day. So in that sense, while Indian attacks were continuing, reports came of Pakistani fighter planes already in the air, and the response having begun. The swift nature of Pakistan's response encouraged a lot of people within Pakistan, but must have surprised, possibly shocked a lot of people on the Indian side, because each encounter is different, and maybe they were looking at a repeat of 2019.
But they didn't get it. I mean, I think they not only did not get a repeat of 2019, they got a stronger response from 2019 as well. And they thought that the response would be maybe a repeat of 2019, but Pakistan showed its might as far as its dominance in different fields is concerned. But another field where Pakistan was dominant was a diplomatic field. We saw Bilawal Bhutto Sardari Sahab and his delegation. We saw our Field Marshal General Asim Munir also going to the US and meeting with the US President, and a very productive meeting between the two. Do you feel India is being isolated diplomatically? Do you feel India's credibility is also at stake?
I think India's behavior in this entire conflict and since then, and evidence of the lack of maturity. Pahalgam kind of unraveled for the Indians. It blew up in their face initially, because there was so much circumstantial evidence which suggested that this was clearly not a foreign attack as such, that that the element of fabrication was there from day one, from minute one, the manner in which the entire sequence progressed. So that said, I think a lot of people around the world looking at India were surprised, because they expected much better from India. Imagine, this is a country which has been taking pride for so many years about its size of its economy, its military potential. The military potential in this entire situation was suffered a major setback. And I think the biggest gain for Pakistan was that after a very long time, the Indians had probably, before this conflict, had probably had one achievement, and that was the dehyphenation of the Indo-Pak or the India-Pakistan subcontinent. 20 years ago, people used to talk about Indo-Pakistan, and then gradually the Indians were able to carve out a bigger space for themselves, primarily because of their economic development. But look at what they've done. From being dehyphenated to back to being hyphenated. It's very much now a question of Indo-Pakistan or India-Pakistan as seen by global policymakers.
All right. Pakistan's win at the Quad, Pakistan's win at BRICS, Pakistan's win at the SCO. How should Pakistan leverage this win internationally?
I think Pakistan must keep on pressing ahead with the matter of Kashmir, which is a very, very dangerous situation, and also involves a history of bad human rights, terrible human rights. So that's something which Pakistan should never take off the table. And then Pakistan should also press on the security risk, because look at the way the Indians continue to build up their own arsenal. whether it's Navy or land forces or the Air Force, although less said about the Air Force after the encounter with Pakistan, but still the Rafales, by the time that the next lot 23 or 26 are inducted, India would have spent more than $15 billion, and that's a big B. More than $15 billion just on purchasing these 36 plus 23, 59 fighter planes and the paraphernalia which came with them. Where has this left India after the encounter with Pakistan? Look at the number of countries which reportedly are now interested in looking at the Chinese J-10C because the world has suddenly woken up, interested in this fighter plane, which comes at a cost which is much less than comparable, supposedly comparable Western fighter planes, and yet has performed exceptionally well. And so this is something which is, I'm sure, is going to go in China's favor.
All right. Thank you very much, Bukhari Sahib, to have stayed with us. If you could stay a few more minutes while we complete the show, it would be wonderful. Next story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the US. In fact, the next two stories concern the US. The first story concerns Elon Musk, that has now formed a party known as America Party, opposing Trump's big beautiful tax bill, as Trump has himself said. And then Trump lashes out at him, says it's ridiculous to start a third party, and he said it's always been a two-party system. I think starting a third party just adds to the confusion. And of course this feud between Elon Musk and Donald Trump has been going on for quite some time, and then there are the concessions that were being given by Donald Trump that now have been removed as far as the electrical vehicle policy is concerned. We've been joined by Dr. Meirowitz. He's a professor, State University of New York Maritime College. He's a lawyer and a political analyst as well. Mark, thank you very much to have joined us. Long time coming. We hadn't talked in a very, very long time. So better late than never, as they say. This launch of Elon Musk's America Party, quote unquote, what does that show about the growing dissatisfaction with the two-party system in the US? Could, this is a huge question mark, I'm underlining this 3-4 times, could this reshape the American political landscape?
It's a pleasure to be with you again in such a long time. Wonderful. Our political system is very complex. People are unhappy with the political parties. Musk came along and he wants to form a third party, but to form a third party by Elon Musk has many bars and complexities. Number one, Musk himself cannot run for president because he's not a natural born citizen. Second, for example, in 1990, 19% of the popular vote. You can imagine that's a large amount of votes, and he got no electoral votes because the electoral votes are given out by the virtue of when you win states. He didn't win any states. And similarly, there have been a number of third parties in our history. They've never been successful. The best analogy that one can give to this is what Hofstadter, a historian, said, that the third parties are like bees. They sting and then they die. They're spoilers. So that's what I think we're seeing here with this party. And I'm not so sure that it's going to have an easy way through.
All right. Mark, I'd also like to understand, do you feel the to and fro, the action and reaction between Elon Musk and Donald Trump, does this show kind of a crack, whether it's deep or not is for you to tell me, within the conservative and right-leaning voter base within the US?
I think the clash between Trump and Musk is sort of kind of maybe out of Greek mythology, where you had Scylla and Charybdis, two great giants fighting with each other. You have the Musk is the genius of technology, and you have Trump, the genius of politics. And at the beginning, it was really a love affair, and then it fell out. And I think one of the reasons it fell out is because, number one, Musk started criticizing Trump and his policies, particularly the so-called Big Beautiful Bill. But secondly, there was a lot of pushback against Musk in the cabinet because what Musk was doing with the Doge was he was going into the different agencies and he was cutting people and firing people without getting the permission of the secretaries of commerce, state, and so forth. So he made a lot of enemies in the cabinet as well. So, and again, I think also because he is not an American, he's a South African. I think a lot of people have a feeling about him that he's coming into America, and in any country would feel that there's somebody coming in from outside and wants to, take over or interfere with the American political and electoral system. So, as I say, but the conflict between the two is a legendary conflict. Started off beautifully. Trump loved Musk and his spaceships and everything, and then now he's fallen out. But that's not unusual. President Trump has had his favorites, and then they fall out of favor.
All right. Mark, I'd also like to understand this feud, this Trump's scrapping of the EV mandate, Musk continuing to push the green technology. Is this clash going to impact the US climate policy, innovation, and global leadership as far as clean energy is concerned?
I didn't quite hear the question, but I think you're asking about the EV.
Yes, the EVs, the scrapping of the EV mandate by Trump, and of course Elon Musk still pushing for the green technology. Is it going to impact US climate policy? Is it going to impact innovation and global leadership as far as clean energy is concerned?
I think that a lot of what Trump has done, particularly with Tesla, with all these technology issues, climate issues, green issues, I don't think these are really significant at the end of the day. I think what this is a really classical political dispute. And the problem relates with the economy, because I know you're thinking about tariffs, we're thinking about the big, beautiful bill. And the question there is, and really this will hinge on the success one way or the other of this third party, and whether it can be successful or whether it's going to be a spoiler, is what will be the result of all the things that Musk is involved in and promoting, depending on how the economy goes. If the economy goes well, then Trump will be fine. If not, then maybe Elon Musk can make some damage to Trump's party or even to the Democrats. We really don't know.
All right, only time will tell. Mark, stay with us, stay with us. We have also a guest in the studios. Farhan Bukhari Saab, Musk has a huge influence as far as tech is concerned, as far as business communities is concerned. This tiff, this war, maybe a word, but it's a strong word, but this tete-a-tete, let's put it that way, between Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Is it going to pose a challenge in the upcoming congressional races as well, or is this tiff just symbolic in nature?
I think it's much too early in the day to come out with a judgment on this. The whole experiment is in its infancy right now, America Party. Where is this going to head? Elon Musk, as we just heard from the other guest, is at a disadvantage because he's not a US born US citizen.
South African.
Naturalized, he's South African. So all those factors stand against him. But we cannot exclude the possibility of Musk in time beginning to be a significant spoiler for Donald Trump and his politics. This is something that we have to watch. It is a possibility if Elon Musk and his standing in the US ends up costing Donald Trump votes, if opinion polls begin to turn against him, then this will certainly be more than just a political dent. But we have to watch this situation as it evolves.
All right. We have to watch the situation as it evolves. Mark, I'd like to understand these internal political rivalries, how or whether would they be able to affect US global decision making, especially when it comes to foreign policy areas? Mark, can you hear us?
Yes. I mean, if you're asking about foreign policy, I think that I'm not so sure that the direct impact of this dispute between Musk and Trump is going to affect foreign policy directly, indirectly. The first issue is in the domestic economy. Now, this impact could come, you talk about the polls, but we have a midterm election coming in the Congress and the Senate in 2026. And if Trump loses the House, his legacy, I think, is pretty much over. Because then if the Democrats control the House, Hakeem Jeffries would be the Speaker, all they're going to do is spend their whole time being obstacles to Trump, and they might even impeach him again for the third time. So our politics is going to go sideways. I am not so sure that this, I know all the things we talked about Musk, but remember, Musk did get involved in a local election in Wisconsin for the Supreme Court judge, Brad Schimmel. He supported him with millions of dollars. And at the end of the day, Musk's candidate lost. So it's not a given that American citizens, when they go to the polls to vote, are going to think, what does Elon Musk think I should do and who I should select? Nevertheless, as you correctly point out, the polls go either way. Either he could be the spoiler, the bee who stings.
True. The polls could go either way, and the polls could maybe predict what's going to happen in the future. There are elections that are going to happen in 2026 as well, and of course, the political future of the current US president also hinges partly or wholly on that as well. Thank you very much, Mark Meirowitz. Thank you very much, Farhan Bukhari. Join us. Last two stories, very, very quickly. The first concerns also Donald Trump. The BRICS summit happened in Brazil. A statement came out. In this joint statement, the group warned the rise in tariffs imposed by Donald Trump threatened global trade, continuing its veiled criticism of the policies regarding the tariffs by US President Donald Trump. US President Donald Trump reacts to this, and he says any country aligning themselves with the anti-American policies of BRICS will be charged an additional 10% tariff. There will be no exceptions to this policy. Thank you for your attention to this matter. He said this on Truth Social, and of course I think this pretty much explains what the US reaction to this statement has been and will be. Last story, today is the 26th martyrdom anniversary of Havaldar Lalik Jan Nishane-Haider. Of course, Lalik Jan laid down his life while defending the motherland during the Kargil war in 1999. He demonstrated exceptional valor by fearlessly repelling the enemy attacks and defended his posts despite critical injuries that he received, and laid down his life for our motherland, Pakistan. Field Marshal Sayyid Asim Munir Sahab, also the Joint Chiefs of Army Staff, also our President and our Prime Minister have all had very important statements regarding Havaldar Lalik Jan and what he represents, this sacrifice that he represents for our motherland. I think this element of sacrifice is what our armed forces have been known for and will continue to be known for, to defend our motherland from all these nefarious elements and forces. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah. Whatever news story segments that pertain to us, you in Pakistan, stay safe. Allah Hafiz.